Dr. Zoltán Kodály, the eminent composer and conductor, during a rare United States appearance, was at the University of California, Santa Barbara, on August 2nd and 3rd, 1966, to preside over a conference of music educators from the Western states. Born in 1882, Dr. Kodály began his music career when he and fellow student Béla Bartók rebelled against the academism of the Deutscher Kulturkampf at the Budapest Conservatory. In 1906, they published 20 Hungarian folk songs, the result of an intensive study of their native Hungarian music. The first American performance of Dr. Kodály's choral work, Missa Brevis in Tempora Valli, was during his tour of the United States in 1946-47, when, on January 26, 1947, he conducted the chancel choir of the National Presbyterian Church, Washington, D.C. Portions of the Missa Brevis heard on this program are from the chancel choir's performance on the 4th anniversary of the occasion. Dr. Kodály is interviewed by Dr. Erno Daniel, professor of music at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and director of the Santa Barbara Symphony.
Dr. Kodály is a very great composer, unquestionably, in the history of contemporary music. How did you become interested? And how did you become involved as a composer in the course of music education in the primary schools as a part of the general education?
Because I detected more and more that we, these so-called highbrow musicians, are quite alone in the world. We have no public. We make music for each other. And so I thought that since music is not a toy for very few selected people, but music is a spiritual food for everybody, so I thought how we could enlarge the public of the serious music, which is called highbrow music, but I think that is only the true music, what is called highbrow. So my attention was almost directed to the primary schools, and I detected that nothing happens there which would be able to introduce general people in music understanding. And I thought on the education of ancient Greeks, where music was one of the chief subjects of general education, which lived forth in the Middle Ages or the universities, the septem artes liberales. Music was also an important part of general education, which in modern times disappeared entirely.
Yes.
So I studied more and more what to make, what could we make to improve that, and to make more people accessible to good music.
Actually, when do you begin the education in music for the child?
This question was posed me some 20 years ago in Paris in a UNESCO conference. Then I answered the music education of the child should begin 9 months before his birth.
Well, that's early enough.
But now, a few months ago, was again a conference in Paris. Then I changed my opinion, and today I mean it should be begin 9 months before the birth of the mother.
What material do you feel that is the best for introducing the child to music?
Now we must begin with the material what the child has already in itself. Each child has learned in his family surrounding or kindergarten some little melodies. And what is more important, each child likes to improvise melodies from himself. Sometimes very primitive and very simple melodies, almost repeating short phrases several times and so on. the teacher must grasp this material and to try to develop it slowly in broader forms. But what we can call the mother tongue of a child, it is built from these fragments of music and melodies, what he hears and what he incorporated in himself and partly composed from himself, because each child is composing.
Yes.
Also, this must be ordered, and to start from this and broaden it slowly in bigger forms, and then this very precociously with new material which is conform to it, and so slowly in many years every child can be conducted as far to be able to understand even Beethoven's music.
Yes. You have, we know that you have written, and under your guidance, books have been written for each grade of the school instruction.
Yes, now I'm surprised to find that there is general interest for that in foreign countries, because my mind was nothing else as to improve in Hungary the situation. So it was made expressly for Hungarian surroundings, and if the system would be adopted in foreign countries, each country must add his own special
Yes.
motivic and musical background,
Yes.
which can anyway combine it with it. The chief thing is a very slow but consequent progress,
Yes.
beginning with the most simple features, and surprisingly quickly they arrive to a 2 or 3 part singing children, because a feeling of harmony is developed very quickly if somebody takes the trouble to deal with. The chief hindrance is that the general schools give too few time for that.
Too little time, yes. What is your idea? How much time the school should spend with music instruction in the general curriculum?
Since the school had to develop homogeneous and balanced men and not specialists, I mean not that a special music teaching should be introduced in general schools, but as many as a complete man needs. A complete man without music does not exist for me. A man without music is incomplete.
Yes.
So we introduced, just with a hard fight with the pedagogic administration, in about 100 schools, a daily singing lesson. It means not a whole hour, 50 minutes or so, but a little music every day. That is important for the child, as well as he had to eat every day, because you cannot nourish well a child if you give him only once a week something to eat. So also music must be eaten every day a little bit.
Yes. And is this everyday portion of an allotted time, or does this portion of time remain the same in higher grades, or it's going to be longer and more? Let's say in the first grade, if the child receives every day.
Every day, 20, 30 minutes.
And how would that work in the second, third, fourth grade, in successive grades?
Later, with a growing child, it can be a little longer, a regular 40 or 50-minute lesson, and then choral rehearsals, because grown-up children from 10th year on are singing in chorus, and
Yes.
and with that they learn many good literature from older time and newer time. And I would emphasize that it's not meant to make from them professional musicians, just to complete men. The professional teaching must be in the beginning exactly the same, because no professional musician can be built from nothing. He must have also he must sing before, because so many great pianists declared that nobody should play piano if she cannot sing. There is even one, the famous rival of Liszt. He wrote that he taught 5 years with an Italian singing teacher. The professional music begins chiefly with instrument playing. Now in those schools, instruments are not obligatory, but after 8 or 9 years, most children want it to play. And then in a few years, it will be seen which one would be able to be a professional musician, because this manual ability are very different, and the professional musician should go out from the same background.
This is a very important point, that music should be a part of the general education.
Yes.
And regardless of someone who might be later on developing into a professional musician, every child should receive the same kind of basic education in music.
That is.
Then when do you think that the professional education in music and the general education in music do separate? In what age in general?
Now with instrument players, about the 10th years, it is already to see which one can be and should be become a professional, because his manual and bodily and all gifts are then clearly to see. And then after 14, they may go over to a special music school to be built to a professional. But as to 14, I mean, everybody should be on the same level in music.
Yes. Now, what material do you use or you advocate using? And
for the beginning, it's the best that natural singing of the child, what he learned from his surrounding, and what he added from his own improvising and composing ability. The next step would be the folk songs. Each country has its own folk songs, which are gives a very rich material to the most different moods and styles. Later on, if the native folk song is exhausted, can be gone over to folk songs of other peoples.
of other countries?
Other countries. First the neighbor countries, and later on also far distant countries, because as many great musicians said already, the best mean to know people is his folk song. And then gradually the big music is introduced. Very many easy pieces of Haydn and Mozart are very much accessible to every child without a special musical training. The big classics, the great classics, are always fairly related to the folk song of their own country. So Haydn to Austrian.
Yes. Beethoven to German.
Yes. And so from the folk song background, the jump is very easy to the great classical music. Whereas the so-called light music gives never a transition to the big classic music. It is entirely separated. Yes. They never together in the same channel. The Greek classic is a natural continuation of folk song.
Now when it comes to the contemporary composer, how do you see his role in creating up-to-date contemporary material for the purpose which we are discussing?
Now he must, at first he must adapt himself to the language of the children. To speak to children, you must know their language. And he can only slowly and very cautiously introduce his own personality without remaining to the child an incomprehensible stranger.
Yes.
He must first speak the language of the children, and slowly he can teach them his own language later. But anyway, contemporary music can follow only after the great classics, not
Yes.
before, as some people means. To let out entirely the great classics and to begin with contemporary music is quite foolish idea. The natural development must be followed also in this.
Being primarily interested in the instrumental end of it, for instance, Bartók's Mikrokosmos for the instrumental beginner.
Now he has very many different styles in the Mikrokosmos that use exclusively the Mikrokosmos is the danger that the child can no more understand Haydn and Mozart.
Yes.
I think Mikrokosmos must go later or at least parallel with the other
material.
music, yes. Anyway, Mikrokosmos is very good to know other people's style, because there are always a lot of foreign people's style,
Yes.
consciously imitated and introduced. But then also it's better to take the original means. Since the child, as it a commonplace, must go over the development of the race. So for the child, the best is the style and motive of very primitive people. Lastly, I found a collection of I know songs, and I will make from them a little series of two-part songs for the very beginners, because I see that these I know motives from the pentatonic or even only with 3 or 4 notes melodic, they are just the style that suits the best the child of every country, because man is finally a unique type, and the many national difference makes no, how to say, in spite of national differences, there is a unity in man, yes, always.
Basically the same.
Basically the same. And so that, especially in the beginning, every child is a primitive man, so to say.
Yes.
And the primitive music is the best for them. And slowly he can develop to his national specialty, and later on to know the national specialties of other nations.
Now, how does the teacher's training the professional teacher, can serve this purpose the best? What should a teacher know? How should a teacher be trained that he might be able to go through, follow through with this kind of education in schools?
That is the big question in every country. With us, some 50 years ago, people began to think that a teacher of music in schools must have, nevertheless, some musical knowledge. And we introduced in our Academy of Music a course of 6 months for people they already worked in schools but had very different musical knowledges. During the last 50 years, these 6 months are grown up to 5 years. We give now to the would-be teachers a course of 5 years after they had already a musical instruction for at least 10 years. With 18 years, they can enter in this course, which gives them a diploma of equal rank of a violinist or pianist or whatever instrument. They must be good musicians. They must have a look of all the classical and modern music, and besides, they must know the technique and the psychology of how to manage children and so on. That is the crucial question in every country to teach. I heard also in America it is a big gap between seriously built musicians and the teachers in schools. The former are looking despising to the others, which are perhaps very mediocre musicians, but they should be brought up to a higher degree to have, as nobody would allow to teach mathematics in primary schools to a bad mathematician. He cannot good reckon. So it should not be allowed to teach music somebody who is not a thoroughly built musician.
As I understand then you believe very much that even in the primary grades, the very first grade, already a specialized music teacher should teach music.
Yes, that would be the ideal situation, but I understand very well that it's, at the time being, it is not to reach, but we must strive for it.
Yes. As you said that once about the composer, that a composer should not feel that when he's writing for the small, it is an easier task than writing music for big, sophisticated audiences, but just the opposite.
Certainly, because he's writing for adult people or for. By the way, it is also a question with very few composers did ask themselves, for whom I am writing? Because most composers are writing for themselves or for a few friends, musicians. If you will write for the child, you must learn before the language of the child.
Who are in your judgment, some of the contemporary composers who are doing this well? It's hard to say.
Now, you see, it happened that some composer never thought to write by purpose for children, and nevertheless many pieces of Haydn are very well suited for children. Why? Because he conserved in himself the soul of a child as to the,
yes.
the
he remained a child.
Age, yes. So I can imagine that maybe existing some composer, good composer, he can never write for a child because he lost the childlike part of his soul.
That's very beautifully said.
And only those composers should try to write for children.
Then you feel that every great artist should have had the
Yes.
child in himself.
She did also. So Beethoven's many themes are, Beethoven itself was, as to the last day, a big child in many things. And even the greatest are the best for the child.
Yes. There is a beautiful saying, the Scotchman Fletcher said, as we talked about it yesterday, that let me write the songs of a nation, and I do not care who makes its laws.
Yes.
That proves the tremendous influence of music over the general development of a child and of a nation.
And of a nation, of adult men too. But no adult men are able to understand music if they did not learn it in childhood. Therefore, it's a big difficulty all over the world now to find listeners for music. Many music is produced, and also good music, but no listeners, too few listeners, not enough listeners. Just as a listener must be educated, and where? Only in the general schools. It must be a curriculum of the general curriculum must be a part of the music.
Now this might be a question which would be hard to answer, but how do you see the role of the university in developing and in helping to develop all these?
Now in two directions. First of all, the university could philosophically and generally in any way so emphasize that music is indispensable for general education. And on the other side, universities, especially American universities, which has all music departments, could much contribute to
the training.
To train the future teachers of music in schools.
So there is a philosophical
and the practical,
side
of it.
And in both areas the university can take
could do very much.
But this conference, of course, which starts tomorrow under your guidance and with you presiding, will do just that, we hope. To emphasize that the university is where the basic philosophy of all of these tenets should have a home, and at the same time the university is the place where the practical means and ways are being instilled in the teachers to create music